Hi, this is Derek Murphy from creativity.com. Today I'm going to talk about print formatting, because what usually happens when I make a book cover, or I'm about to make a book cover, usually I'll make the ebook cover first, which is just the front, and then the author will say, okay, please finish the back and the spine, and I'll say I need the page count of the formatted manuscript before I can calculate the spine width. And then they'll say, oh, formatting, what's that? How do I do that? What do I need it for? And so when you're self-publishing, if you have a book and you want to make a print version available, usually with print on demand, I recommend CreateSpace. You have to have your manuscript formatted for print. It's not just going to take care of itself if you upload it to CreateSpace. It's not the same as formatting your manuscript. Writers usually learn when you're going to submit a query to an agent, you're supposed to format your manuscript a certain way, which is usually Times New Roman, 12-point, double spacing, 1-inch margins, and 8.5 by 11 sheet of paper. That's not how you need to format a manuscript for print. That's not where you're going to send to CreateSpace. What you need to do is decide, first of all, of the print size, usually 6 by 9, 5.25 by 8. If you go to CreateSpace, you can see there's a lot of different print options, but generally you want your print book, I think, to be around 350 pages, not less than 200 or 250, because it makes it kind of too thin. It looks sort of like a magazine, and not more than 400 pages, because then it gets thick and the page count starts eating into your profit a lot more. Plus, the bigger your book, the less accurate the spine design will be on the book, because there's tiny variations in the paper can make a thick spine can be a little bit off, and it'll make the spine look a little weird if it doesn't line up with the edges of the paper. So you've got to format your book for print. You can do it in Microsoft Word, and while that's not impossible, it's much more difficult than you probably think it will be. And I know a lot of authors who say, well, I'm not going to pay a couple $100 to format my book for print. I'll just learn how to do it myself. So they try to do it in Microsoft Word, and it becomes kind of a mess, because there's a lot of features in Microsoft Word that you're not used to using. And so when you start to try to figure things out, you might lay out certain things, but you may not do things correctly, and you'll make it much harder than it should be to actually get everything done. Plus, Word is a little bit fickle. Not only is it not great for print because it doesn't space words as well as other text layouts. I usually use InDesign if I'm doing formatting. InDesign is the preferred software for book design. However, if you don't have InDesign and you hire a designer like me to format the book for you, later when you have changes, or you've caught a new typo, because there's always an extra typo, later when you want to change something, you can't do it. You have to go back to the designer and they have to make the changes for you, which is why I stopped doing formatting, because it turns into this almost lifetime thing. You do the first draft, and then a year later you have the revised edition, and it just keeps going. I don't like to do formatting. I don't enjoy it. It's pretty boring, and it's really a pain in the ass. But it's a valuable skill for you to learn how to do yourself if you're publishing a lot of books. If you're only publishing 1 or 2 books, I would say pay for it. It'll save you 20 hours, a ton of grief, and hair pulling to get somebody else who knows what they're doing to do it for you. You can pay someone to do it in Microsoft Word so that you can do the changes later. However, like I said, Microsoft Word isn't ideal. Or you can pay someone to do it in InDesign, as long as they're totally done, as the manuscript is totally done and you don't think there's going to be more changes. Although there's always more changes, that even when you've edited it and gone through it 1,000 times, there's always something that makes it into print. So if you only have a couple books, pay somebody. But if you're going to publish a lot of books, or a long series, and they all have to be in print, it makes a lot of sense to handle the formatting on your own. If you have InDesign software, I've put out a bunch of InDesign templates which are basically formatted well, so you can start using them and just put in your content. And that's not too much work. You don't really have to learn everything about InDesign to use one of my templates and just put in your content. If you're using Word, I also have some templates, but it's a little bit trickier. It's not quite as automatic, and it's easy for things to go wrong in Word. It's easy to make a little change and all of a sudden all the headers and the margins are going on the wrong side. It's not quite as organized as Adobe InDesign is, but it's probably a safer option. It's not quite as nice looking as Adobe InDesign, but most readers aren't going to notice. If you use the same fonts and the same spacing and everything, and you lay out and you have one print book done in Adobe InDesign and one print book done in Microsoft Word, most readers, they might feel that the Adobe InDesign one feels a little better, the reader experience is a little bit nicer and smoother, but they won't be able to tell you why. Mostly it's because the spacing of the words in each sentence is just done a little bit better, whereas in Word, the spacing between the words, it can be a little bit broken up so that certain sentences might have several short words with larger spaces between them because Microsoft isn't quite as smart about word spacing. But if you're self-publishing, formatting in Word, if you do it right, is probably the smarter option, even if it's not quite as nice looking, because once you learn how to do it, you'll have more control about it, and then you can go back and make changes or fix typos whenever you want, or if you have a series, you can just use the same template and keep going through the series for future books. But you've got to learn a few things about formatting, no matter what you use, InDesign or Microsoft Word. The main thing that most authors don't realize is that you have to use styles. I'll talk mostly about Microsoft Word in this video, but in Word, you have to set a style for the default paragraph text, the normal style. You have to set a different style for the headers, the subtitles, any special text like handwritten notes or special italics if you have a letter or poetry or something. You probably also want to set a style for the title page. Your book, no matter which program you use to format, you're going to have a title page. You're going to have a couple pages in the beginning of front matter, which doesn't have headers or page numbers. Then you're going to have chapter titles. On every chapter, you have a page where the text starts about halfway down, and you have a little bit of a chapter title or heading up on top, and then you have your first paragraph, which is probably not indented or may not have a drop cap on the first paragraph, and then you probably won't have a page number on that first page of the chapter. On every other page, you have facing pages where there's probably a header on the top of both. They can be centered, which is easier, or they can be left and right aligned so that they're on the outside of the page when you're flipping the book. And they'll also have page numbers on both pages. The tricky thing with Word is that you have those two facing pages, and the style for both of the pages isn't the same. They're mirror facing. So you have to make sure that you didn't do it backwards so that the title and the page number are in the inside of each book. And then if you have a chapter that skips a page or there's a blank page, everything might be off. It's easy to get the numbers messed up so that it starts going through and then the page count starts over, or it skips a number or something else happens. So you've got to check that stuff well. And it's much harder to do at the end after you've already tried to format and mess things up. It's harder to go back. The reason we add styles is because otherwise, every time you make a change, if you want to change, for example, you decide to change the font on the header of each chapter, you have to go through every chapter and make that same change 25 times to make the font change for all the chapters. But if we had used styles, then you could just highlight that one first chapter title, change the font, update the style, and then all the other chapter titles will match. What I usually get is a manuscript where everything is done in the default normal text style. So if I want to update or I make a change on the normal default up style, the paragraph style, it will undo all the formatting for everything else. If you've set fonts and sizes for the chapters, for different texts, the title pages, all of that will be gone once I've updated the normal style, because you only use one style for the whole book. So what you have to do is use styles when you're starting your formatting. Use styles for all the different sections so that they can update easily. Also, you have to use, in Microsoft Word, you have to use the H1 style for the chapter titles so that it'll automatically generate a table of contents in Microsoft Word. I'll show you that in a future video, but if you set the H1 style correctly, it's built into Microsoft Word. You can just select it, but then you'll have to change the style and update the style to however you want. Once that's there, every time you highlight one of your chapter headings, on the left side, you'll see a little panel of your chapters, and you'll have a built-in table of contents. That's going to be really important when we take your Word file and we convert it to ebook later, because you're going to need that built-in table of contents, which you can only get if you use the styles correctly. So this is just kind of a short introduction to formatting. I'm going to put this on my site, DIYbookformats.com, and make a few more videos where I'm actually showing you my screen, and we'll do a sample format, and we'll go through and format a book for print. And then I'll also make some videos about making ebooks and ebook conversion. And there's a ton of different ways to make ebooks. I'm going to do a series of like 25 different ways to make ebooks, because there's lots of software and tricks and hacks. Some are easier than others. You kind of have to find whatever works for you. The way I suggest doing it is formatting your book for print in Word correctly, and then using a free online ebook conversion tool, which will take about a minute and just make you an ebook. If you've done your Word setup correctly, your ebook should look pretty good and fine and done. Because your ebook doesn't really matter that much. It's got to be clean and functional, and it has to work, but you really don't want to get bogged down in style considerations or fancy decorations or other things. You just want to make it functional and simple. And so you can open up your ebook and edit it and add styles and stuff, but I wouldn't really recommend doing that. And I think in a lot of cases, not only is it unnecessary, but it's easy to break your ebook so that it doesn't work. It may look really good on one platform, but it's not going to look good on every platform, because every ebook reader or every ebook platform reads the code a little bit differently. So it may look good, but it may not be the same on all the different ebook readers, and it may look like crap on some ebook readers if something breaks. So it's better to keep your ebook really simple. But I'll put up a lot of videos soon about ebook formatting and different ways to format your ebook. If you're getting started with print, there's a free package of templates on DIYbookformats.com that you can grab, and I'm going to add another set soon with more options that'll have like 30 or 40 design templates. I'm not sure yet. Just because it's really easy if you're formatting for print. There's only a few changes that you need to make. There's only a few decisions. Really, it's, do you want your headers centered or right aligned? Do you want a non-indent on the first paragraph? Do you want a drop cap? There's maybe like 5 choices to make. And then all you're doing is matching your fonts with your book cover. Hopefully your book cover is good. So really, you don't need a lot of different templates or a lot of choices, because you could use 3 or 4 templates that have all the changes, and you just pick one and you change the fonts and you'll be done. But a lot of authors want a lot of choices and options. So I'm going to upload a lot of different styled templates that you can pick from. But you don't want to pick the best looking template. You want your template to match your book cover. So if you've done your book cover right and you have good fonts already, that's the font you want to use. If you haven't done your book cover yet, that's fine. Then you can use one of my fonts. You can use one of the templates that I've done, and you can just use one of my fonts on the book cover to match it. That'll be pretty easy too. Besides this, I also have DIYbookcovers.com and some other templates and resources for making your own book cover design. So if you haven't done any design yet for your book and you need a cover and formatting, then you can start with my formats, because they're going to be really good, and I'll suggest a bunch of awesome free fonts that you can use which work well for different genres. I almost said any genre, but there's no font that works for any genre. Every genre has its own design considerations. So while this certain font may look really good, it may only work for one particular genre. It may be ineffectual for another genre, because it's not what readers come to expect from that designer, from that genre's design considerations. Anyway, I'll stop this video now. This is just kind of a brief introduction. Coming soon, more in-depth, hands-on, actual design tutorials where I'll show you how to start designing books for print.